Welcome, old-timey Latin grammar fans, to the Beast lecture. Now remember, old-timey Latin grammar are the traditional terms used that we've already learned the concepts. We've just used a more syntactic approach. So this is just a review and a slight clarification. Let's start with the first one. And these are the standards that we're going to cover in the Beast are ablative of means, comparison, common, ablative of absolute, common, ablative of cause, different, ablative of degree of difference, different. Ablative of agent, we know that one. Objective ablative, a little different, but we know that one. And ablative of description, that's going to be key. Start with ablative of means. An ablative of means is a means phrase, which we've seen throughout, that describes how it's done. We see with our eyes, fighting with fists, with heels, with nails, and even teeth. So therefore, these are all ablative of means, how you do something, the instrumentality. Next, ablative of comparison, which we've already seen. When you have a comparative adjective or even an adverb, you can use a quam, than, or you can use also an ablative of comparison. He is more eloquent than Cicero. Ablative absolute, of course, is what we've already covered. Ablatives become subject phrase. The ablative participle signifies the verb. AP, unlike the SAT2, will prefer the with this having happened or with this happening. So let's take a look at a few of them. Here we have dea potentior eris. The key of this one is the whole context, the eor, a comparative adjective. Therefore, you will see generally a comparative ablative of comparison. You are greater than a god. Moving on. Nos delecta. Now, delecta is actually an imperative. Pleasure us by means of ablative means phrase, stories. So, ablative means. And then, of course, fuerimus, we will have been more noble. A comparative, therefore you look for the ablative, and there you have it with vobis, ablative of comparison. Now, moving on to the next few standards that we're going to cover, let's also talk about ablative of cause, which is the same dang thing as ablative of means. However, traditional grammars say if the verb is passive, or if the actor is acted upon by the ablative instead of doing the ablative, it's not a means, it's a cause. I come by order of Jupiter, right? I am distracted by grief. They are not moved by money. So therefore, contented with little. So in other words, means is when the actor is doing something. I stab you with a shiv, versus cause, I am stabbed by shiv. Actually, be shanked. Ablative of degree of difference is a very rare, very uncommon, and it's a small thing. When you have a comparative, you can use the ablative as saying it's a little bit, right? A little afterward, a little I would more prefer. Used generally with comparative words or ablatives that are nouns that express comparison. I would prefer more. So what we have here is we have a participle and an ablative. Clearly, always the same rule, ablative absolute. I, terrified by the clamor, fled. So therefore, terrified refers to the subject phrase. And it's passive, therefore it's not an ablative of means, but an ablative of cause. And, of course, our favorite agent phrase, you were being taught ab eo, ablative of agent. Ablative of agent will always have an ab or ah, and it's always a person. All right, moving on to objective ablative. Objective ablative occurs with only a few verbs. They are common. Utor, fruor, fungor, potior, and westcor. All ablatives, all deponents, and all their compounds will take the ablative as the object phrase. To use advice, I will avail myself of your kindness. Prayer fruor, I enjoy you. To perform an idle service, etc. Properly an ablative of means, but it's really considered an objective ablative with these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 verbs. Ablative of description is the new one for us. The ablative of it works as an adjective. So in other words, when a noun is in an adjective, When a noun is in the ablative, it'll serve as an adjective. A rainbow with 1,000 colors. Now, obviously, the Romans didn't think of, oh, this is an ablative of description. These are 19th century grammar terms you need to know. So the river with steep banks. So in other words, the steep banks describe the river. You are in good mind. Quality of the thing is described. This is also called the descriptive ablative of quality. Sometimes it's called the ablative of respect, but generally speaking, ablative of description. So when a noun modifies, is in the ablative, it acts as an adjective. Ablative of description describes a substantive by describing it. A woman with rare beauty. All right? So let's play with it. Ablative of agent, we've already talked about. I gave it to you before. It's the doer of an ablative with the preposition of, and it's always a person. So let's see what we have here. I am more diligent than the prince. That's an ablative of comparison. Utabatur. Always go to the verb first. It's utor, fruor, fungor, poscior, etc., etc. Takes an ablative object phrase. And then finally, the senators were more ablative of comparison. Well, there you go. So that takes care of beast. There are grammar descriptions below, and you have your ultimate vade mecum. So enjoy the exercise, and remember, 80% is passing. And until the next video, aloha.